Good afternoon. I see a lot of interest in tilapia, in fisheries. So this afternoon, I'm going to talk about productivity, specifically factor productivity, technical change, and farmers' technical efficiency in the dynamic growth of the tilapia industry. So this is the outline of my presentation for this afternoon. First, we're going to look at the brief profile of the tilapia industry. First, the fishery sector, then the tilapia industry specifically. Then I'm going to present the genetic improvement, the current genetic improvement in tilapia strains or tilapia varieties, if you like. I'm going to present also two methodologies in measuring technical efficiency, technical change, and total factor productivity. These methodologies will help us identify the sources of output growth in the industry, and knowing where the sources of output growth are coming from, then it can help us point to some policy direction to further boost the tilapia production in our country. So first, the fishery sector. The sector contributes 2.2% to our GDP. It is only a subsector. It's a small subsector under agriculture, but it is a net food producer. In other words, we are self-sufficient in our production of fishery products. Fishery production comes second to crop production. We have 61% of crop production contributing to our total agricultural value added. And then fishery is the second, which is 15%. Also, the fishery sector is an important source of our foreign exchange. Note that we have this amount of export, that's 26 million peso worth of exports, but our fishery import is only 7 million. So there's really a lot of foreign exchange that we earn from the fishery sector. So the Philippines is actually a net exporter of fish. This is the breakdown of our fishery sector. We have commercial, municipal, and aquaculture. The commercial are fish harvested from open sea fishing, and municipal is the harvest from coastal fishing. Then aquaculture is, of course, from fish farm. And if you notice, in terms of volume, the blue ones, the biggest contributor to our fishery sector is aquaculture, 49%. So that's telling us that almost half of the fish eaten in our country are already farmed or aquaculture. Okay, the other half are wild fish coming from the coastal and our open waters. In terms of value, however, if you look at the red lines, the prominence of the aquaculture is not that much. In fact, it is reduced from 49% to 37%. And one of the reasons why the value of our aquaculture production is not as much as the quantity of production is because we produce a lot of seaweeds, and seaweed is a low value product. It's a low value product. This is the growth in the trend of our production from commercial, municipal, and aquaculture, and the violet one is the trend in our aquaculture, and it's really increasing very fast. The growth is about 8%. The municipal is the green lines, and it's just growing at 3%. Commercial is also growing at 3%. So this afternoon, I'm supposed to talk to you about tilapia. So tilapia is one of our biggest aquaculture species, and this is a new toy. So, tilapia has over 100 species all over the world. And it is a freshwater fish. It is omnivorous, meaning it eats anything, practically anything. They even eat themselves. So the tilapia is very prolific in nature, and therefore it had spread worldwide and had become one of the most important aquaculture species, not only in our country but also in Asia. This is the value and volume of our aquaculture species, and this is tilapia, okay, and this is milkfish. Then this is seaweed. So if we look at volume of production, we see that seaweed is 70% of our aquaculture production. Tilapia is only 11% and milkfish is 14%. But if we look at the value, the red lines, note that our highest or the highest contributor to our value of production, aquaculture production is milkfish, and followed by tiger prawn, then tilapia. So, in terms of production, tilapia ranks third, next to seaweeds and milkfish. In terms of value, it also ranks third, next to milkfish and tiger prawn. So, even if tiger prawn is only 2% of our production, it's a very high value crop. So, it's around 350 per kilo. So, that's why it contributes 23% to total value of production. Seaweed around only 7 pesos per kilo of the fresh seaweeds. Okay, this is the trend in production, tilapia production, and if we try to look at the growth trend, this is the production trend, this is the growth trend. We can divide it into phases. Like phase 1 will be prior to 1999. And 1999 is an important year because that's where the country started promoting modern strains that were developed genetically. And then this is another phase from 1999 to 2006 where we have a sustained growth in our production of tilapia. And then since 2006, we now have a decline in the growth. This is growth. Okay, so it means our production is still rising, but not as fast as here before. So our growth is still positive until 2010, when the growth became negative. Because there's a lot of problem in 2010. We have lots of typhoons. We have very long summer, which contributed to stunted growth of not only tilapia but a lot of aquaculture species. We have also a lot of fish kill, and it's still happening until now. So that's why our production in 2010 has a negative growth. And I presume that 2011 similarly will have a negative growth rate. Okay. Culture environment, we said that tilapia is a freshwater fish, and therefore it's generally grown under freshwater environment. So these are the fish pond, the biggest culture environment, followed by fish cages, and then fish pen. The difference between these two, the fish cages are those found in the middle of the water. The fish pen are those near shore. So you just corral the area and put some fingerlings and you grow your aquaculture tilapia. These are small farm reservoir, like occasional ponds. And then there's a very small, about 6% contribution of brackish water fish pond. Even if tilapia is a freshwater species, there are some strains that can grow on brackish water, but still at the moment very small, only 6%. So generally, it's all freshwater. And we can grow tilapia in a very, commercialized, intensive environment, or a very traditional low input, low budget environment where you just put up some drops and nets. So these are examples of your fish cages. These are our tilapia producing regions, and if you notice, there's a lot of production in region 3 and region 4A, and very little in other areas. So Pampanga is region 3, producing 39% of our tilapia production. Batangas, 22%, and Rizal. Both of these are in region 4. All these three provinces constitute already 65% of total production of tilapia in our country. This is our value of tilapia production in nominal and real value. So this is the deflated value of our tilapia production. If you notice, the nominal value is rising expectedly, but the real value seems to stabilize, taper off, and decline a bit. And one of the reasons why we have this kind of behavior for our value of tilapia production is that the real wholesale price and real retail price of tilapia both are trending downwards. So we have declining real prices of tilapia. Okay, so here, our real prices of tilapia, both retail and wholesale, are declining over time. Question is this good? Well, it's very good for the consumer. The tilapia is getting cheaper and cheaper over time. And in fact, nowadays, tilapia is the poor man's fish. Before it's the, what we call the gingy, the galungo, or in English, the round scad. So, a decade ago, round scad is the poor man's fish. But now it is tilapia. One of the reasons is that the real price really is going down over time. So we look at the other side of the story. Is it good for the consumer? The answer is yes. Is it good for the producer? Normally, declining prices is disadvantageous on the part of the producer. But in other studies that we have done in fishery economics, we have calculated the elasticity of the demand for tilapia. And we have found out that tilapia demand is elastic. And so we have a lot of economics students here, I see. And you know that when the good is elastic and you lower the price, the total revenue should increase, right? So it is good for the consumer to have real prices going down. It is also good for the producer, as long as they can cover their costs, right? As long as they're still making profit, the real price going down is not really a big problem. Okay, for as long as the demand for tilapia is elastic. Alright, this is the tilapia consumption, regional, broken down into different income groups. So you have the rich, the middle class, the poor, the very poor. Okay, and if you look at the regional distribution, you see a lot of the consumption actually are concentrated in the Luzon regions. Okay, up to Mimaropa, there. There's very little in the Visayas, in all the groups, okay, and a little in Mindanao, there. So the conclusion here is that tilapia is popular only among the Luzon people. Visayan doesn't like to eat tilapia, and a little of the people from Mindanao, they will consume tilapia. What's the reason behind it? Well, there's a lot of waters in the Visayan region, also in the Mindanao region. You know, we are 7,100 islands, right? And therefore, that's a lot of fishing grounds for our fishermen, and therefore for our consumer also. That's a lot of fish coming from the coastal water. And so, if you're presented tilapia versus lapu-lapu, of course, you'll go for the lapu-lapu or the mackerel. or the talakito, the jacks. So you have a lot of these wild caught fish in this area. And they are cheap there. They are relatively very cheap in this area. And therefore tilapia does not, cannot compete with that. But in Luzon, we do not have a lot of those fish. Those fishes are actually very expensive here, and therefore the tilapia is very popular in the Luzon regions. This is the net supply of tilapia. So if you look at the demand and the supply of tilapia in the country, you will see that, for example, NCR has a negative net supply, meaning the demand is bigger than the supply. Of course, NCR doesn't produce any tilapia. Tilapia are coming from here, Region 3 and Region 4. That's where you have a lot of supply surplus. And the rest are all negative. We just have positive surplus here in these 4 regions. Okay, now let's talk about the development of different tilapia strains. And this field is exciting because there's so much development that happened in the tilapia industry. First, in 1950s, tilapia was introduced in our country, but the species that was introduced is Oreochromis mozambicus. This kind of tilapia is very small, it's very black, and it did not prosper as a food fish in the 1950s. People didn't like the mozambicus because it's black, it's ugly, and it's small. Then in the 1970s, the Oreochromis niloticus was again reintroduced, and this time it was accepted as a food fish, mostly in Luzon. The niloticus is bigger, is lighter in color, and therefore it appeals to the consumer. And in the middle of the 1970s, the sex reverse tilapia was developed. This is an all-male tilapia population. And to convert the female tilapia into male tilapia, you have to feed the fish with synthetic male hormone when they are before 25 days old, when they're really very small. Why would you like an all-male tilapia? Well, one, the male tilapia is big. They grow faster. Okay? The female tilapia are smaller because the growth is stunted by their reproductive, how do you say, activity. Okay, so the male tilapia can concentrate on growing, but the female tilapia, aside from growing, are also concentrating in reproducing. So you don't want that in your fish stock. So you want an all-male tilapia population. Okay. And of course, Dr. Rafi Guerrero of our Picamart is very famous in the sex reverse tilapia technology because he's the one who introduced this together with Professor Adelia of the Freshwater Aquaculture Center. Then in the late 1970s, the tilapia genetic R&D started. So feeding the fish with a hormone is not genetic R&D, right? So genetic R&D is when you actually do hybridization of the Nile tilapia, and these are works coming from the freshwater aquaculture of the CLSU and ICLAR, which is now WorldFish. WorldFish now is housed in Circa. And by the way, this project that I'm presenting to you is part of the work that was commissioned to us by the WorldFish Center. In 1986, the fast tilapia was introduced. This is the FAC selected strain. It is also called the IDRC strain because it was funded by IDRC. So this was developed in the Freshwater Aquaculture Center. In 1988, the GMT came out. This is the genetically male tilapia. This is an alternative to the sex reverse first tilapia. This is a YY male technology. The super male tilapia with YY genotype. Well, of course, you have a little of your biology. For females, you have the XX genotype. The males will have the XY genotype. But this tilapia has XYY. Okay, so that's why it's called a super male. Again, it is an alternative to the hormone-treated sex-reversed tilapia. Okay, the same reason why you wanted an all-male population. You want bigger fish. 1997, the gift came out, and the gift is genetically improved farm tilapia. And this is done by selective breeding technique. This was conducted in the BFAR, together with BFAR in Nueva Ecija, and also with the FAC. And so you have the gift. And in the same year, the Get Excel was introduced by BFAR, and this is it's a very low name. It's genetically enhanced tilapia for the Get, and the Excel is excellent strain that has comparative advantage with other tilapia strain for intrapremural livelihood. In short, Get Excel. Okay, so that's the tilapia that was developed by BFAR. And in 1998, works on saline tolerant tilapia started at 2 sites of BFAR, one in Muñoz, Nueva Ecija, and they're developing the best brackish water and hand-selected tilapia. And in BFAR, Pangasinan, they're developing the Mulopicus strain. Both are saline tolerant. At present, these are under field testing. Okay, it's not yet really commercialized. So, my talk actually is more about the estimation of factor productivity. And so the rationale here is to find out what propelled the phenomenal growth in the tilapia industry. Is that growth sustainable? That's the question. And therefore we need to see, is the growth coming from technological progress, from area expansion, or input intensification? Okay, so here are the objectives. So the estimation procedure that we did, we wanted to identify the sources of the growth in total factor productivity in tilapia production, and this can be broken down into technical chain, farmers' efficiency, scale effect, and price effect. There is also other sources of output growth aside from TFP. Oops, sorry. Okay. Aside from TFP, and these are prices and these are changes in the prices of both input and output and intensity of the input use. Okay, so they can also affect production, growth in production. And lastly, we want to compare the relative contribution of these different sources of output growth so that we can strategically pinpoint directions towards improving productivity in the tilapia industry. Okay, first, let me define factor productivity. If we take the ratio of output to a particular input, we call that partial factor productivity. Okay? But if we take the ratio of output to total inputs, then that's your famous total factor productivity, or the TFP. The TFP is growth in output, not explained by the amount of the input used in the production. And therefore, if the TFP is not due to input use, then what is it? It is basically composed of technical change, technical efficiency, and other effects. Okay? So we want to determine how efficiently and intensely the inputs, aside from the total factor productivity estimation, this study is also interested in determining how efficiently and intensely the farmers are using their inputs of production. Okay, so there are two measures that I will present this afternoon. One is a parametric approach using the frontier production function, and the other one is a Thornquist index decomposition. So let me talk about the Thornquist index decomposition first. You can approach the decomposition process two ways. One, through the nominal revenue function, or through its dual, which is the nominal cost function. Okay? And you can break it down into these components, increase in output prices. So it's like rationalizing why would your revenue increase? Okay? The revenue will increase because the output price increases, because there was an increase in the input use, and therefore if you use more input, you're supposed to get more output, provided your marginal product is positive, and then you have a growth in TFP. Okay? In the same manner, why would your cost function increase? Or why would cost of production increase? One, because the prices of the inputs are more expensive. Two, because you produce more, right? When you have more output, then your cost of production should increase. And here we are assuming positive marginal cost. Or there is a fall in the total factor productivity. Okay? So these are two ways of computing your TFP growth. Okay? Either through revenue or through cost. But when your TFP is growing, then your revenue is enhanced. At the same time, your cost is increased. Okay? That's a basic conclusion we can get. If you get TFP that is positive. Okay, this is the formula. We have a paper for this, and there is also this is a good source for the growth decomposition by Dr. Dumangan and Ball, and it is published in Applied Economics. The source of data that we use to be able to decompose the Thornquist index, we need a panel data. So you need 2 points in time. And here we have published cost and return data coming from the Stride Foundation in 1996 for this location. And also the BAS, the Bureau of Agricultural Statistics, the cost and return survey in 2002 for this location. And this period covers 1996 to 2002, and this is the story in that period. It's increasing production, but the growth, you look at the growth rate, there's a drastic jump of the growth rate from 98 to 99. This is where all the new technologies are already in place. They are all now marketed, okay, 1998, 1999. And so we enjoy that time up to 2006 with the new technology. And then we have this declining phase, okay, of tilapia production. So this is the result of our Thornquist decomposition. And the important number to look at here is the annual TFP growth. Okay? So in Pampanga we have 3.5%, in Nueva Ecija we have 13.2%, for the whole Philippines we have 2.7%. That's around, on the average, 3 to 4%, right? But there's, dramatic TFP growth in Nueva Ecija. Well, the question is why? The answer is, the FAC is in Nueva Ecija. Okay, the Freshwater Aquaculture Center is there. So it is very easy to procure the quality fingerlings of tilapia. But given the big disparity of the whole Philippines and say Pampanga, which is a neighboring province, it seems like the diffusion of the new tilapia fingerlings is not yet well in place. But this is up to 2006. This is the reason why we have increase in TR. It's because of the increase in input use. Okay, and if you look at the different inputs, it is the feeds that is that shows a lot of increase. Okay, the meaning of this graph is that the farmers, the tilapia farmers, are actually going into intensive feeding of their tilapia stock. Okay, and they're using a lot of commercial feeds. So here we have fertilizer and feeds. What is fertilizer doing here? This is pond aquaculture, and when they prepare the pond, they put fertilizer there, and it enhances the production of natural food, natural. How do you call that? The natural algae. The natural algae. So it serves as food also, alternate food. So you have that fertilizer. And why is cost of production increasing? Well, this is all increasing prices of the inputs. Okay, so those are your benchmark data for prices of inputs. The second approach uses the frontier production function to decompose your total factor productivity growth into technological change, scale effect, technical efficiency, and price effect. And the beta J here are the slope parameters of the production function. The RTS is returns to scale, and it's the summation of your beta. The lambda is the ratio of the individual output elasticity to returns to scale, this formula. This is the change in the use of the input between the two periods. And this is the share in the cost of input J to total cost, the XJ. That is the contribution of the cost of the input to total cost. So you will be able to break down your growth in total factor productivity into this component. And what are these? One, technological change effect, or the TC, the change in TC. It captures the growth of the productivity due to the adoption of the new technology. Okay, so when you shift to a new technology, it's called the technological change effect. Technical efficiency captures the growth in productivity due to the improvement in the farmers' management practices. So this is inherent in the skill of the farmers. If the farmers are good in their production process, then they will have very high technical efficiency. If they're not, then technical efficiency is going to be low. Scale effect accounts for the TFP growth due to the changes in the returns to scale of the farm operation. So you look at the whole farm operation, you have heard of large scale, medium scale, small scale. So the scale effect is moving from one scale, like moving from a small scale to a medium scale to a large scale. Okay. So we want to measure this also to give advice if it is worth moving from one scale operation to another. And then the price effect, it represents the change in TFP brought about by the deviation of input prices to the value of their marginal product. There's a little economics here. You have to maximize your profit at the same time to have efficient allocation of resources. The value of the marginal product of the input has to be equal to its price. And so when they are equal, you are price efficient in the allocation or use of the input. And if they are not, then you have to adjust, right? So this is the reason for measuring the price effect. The second methodology was applied to two surveys done by the World Trade Center, one in the year 2003 and the second in 2006 in Taale. This is the lake there. And this is your Taal volcano. And then that's another lake inside your Taal volcano. And that's why it's called the lake within a lake. Okay? And this is where your Taal Lake is. It's, of course, in Batangas, here in Luzon. Okay, this is the time period of the two study, 2003 to 2006. And we still have, nice increasing production of tilapia and also very prominent trend in our growth rate in tilapia production. Okay, so these are the different effects that we were able to calculate in decomposing our total factor productivity. The change in the technical change effect is measured by the coefficient of the time variable dummy in the frontier production function. Okay, so when we run our panel data using a frontier production function, the coefficient of our time dummy is our TC. This one is our technical change effect. Okay, and this is 1.17% actually. Standard error, t-value, bigger, almost 2, so it is statistically significant, and therefore conclusion, the technological change in that period in the Taal is statistically significant. And this is due to the technological development in the form of varietal strains that evolved extensively over the years, and these are our examples. Although there was an observed technological progress in tilapia cage culture in Taal Lake, you note that TC is very small. It's only about 1.2%, okay, over 3 years. So we still have to divide this over 3 years to get annual growth. And based on our farmers' interview in the area, they said that the strains that are commonly farmed in Taal Lake are not actually the modern strains that are available to us. Most of them actually use the traditional Oreochromis niloticus species. Question, why are they not using the modern strains? And one of their answers is that it's very hard to get the new strains. They are mostly concentrated in Nueva Ecija. So if you're in Batangas and you transport the fingerlings, the tiny babies, there will be a lot of mortality. So we need actually hatcheries around this area that produces the quality fingerlings in order to take advantage of the presence of the new technology. You may ask, why has these hatcheries not thought of putting a business on modern strains? Well, they actually have started putting hatcheries around where we have the largest producing tilapia regions, but they encountered a lot of problems, okay? And they stopped the production, and therefore nowadays there's a lot of demand for these new strains. Anybody who wants to go to business, this is a good area to come in because there's a high demand and supply is not enough. Okay, technical efficiency. We estimated efficiency in 2003 and efficiency in 2006. We got the difference, and that's the technical efficiency effect. And the difference is, this is 62.52%, 67.76%. So there's an increase of 5% efficiency in the farmers over the 3 years. And so we can say that the technical efficiency actually increased, but only by 5%. Okay, so it's still very low. Because the technical efficiency is less than 70% in both periods. And therefore, the conclusion is that there's still plenty of room for increasing technical efficiency of the farmers in Taal Lake. And the appropriate strategy to further increase production is not to change the technology. They can stick to the technology that they're using, but we have to improve on the capability of farmers in improving their efficiency. We can do this through proper training and more serious technology extension, either from the public or private sector. But there's a bigger story behind why farmers are inefficient in Taal Lake. When we went there, we were talking to what they call caretakers. They are not the owners. They are not the real tilapia farmers. They were hired laborers. Who are the owners? That's a big political issue. Who are the tilapia farmers in Taal Lake? They're normally politicians, very rich politicians, and they have hectares and hectares of tilapia cages, which they farm out to many caretakers. Because there's a rule in Taal that you can only operate at the most, I think, 5 cages. And 1 cage is about 100 square meter. Okay, so if you want to have large area of tilapia cages, then you have to have dummies who are supposed to be owners, but not really owners, and they are caretakers. And so these caretakers are not really serious in farming tilapia. Okay, they get paid. And so they manage the farms. So how to increase the capability of these farmers, how to make this over 70%, make this 80, 90%. Well, these farmers, tilapia farmers in Taal Lake has to be serious. And how do you become serious on your business? You have to own it. You have to be the real farmer, not just a caretaker. Okay. Scale effect. Okay, we're coming into more deeper economic theory here. So these are the estimated coefficient, and if you sum them up, we have a 0.5. This is the returns to scale, and this is less than 1. So it is characterized as a DRS, decreasing returns to scale. By definition, when you double your input, your output will not double. Okay, that's a DRS. And that is a negative scale effect here, because the formula of the scale effect is RTS minus 1. Okay? So when your RTS is less than 1, then this thing is negative. That makes your scale effect negative. And what is the implication? The implication is that the present cage sizes in Taal Lake is no longer conducive for expansion. And this is agreeable to the current move of the Taal government to limit aquaculture operation in some part of the lake. Well, you have witnessed a lot of fish kills recently, and the reason there is the crowding of fish cages there. So, well, the result of our study is supportive of the move to reduce the fish cages that are present in the lake. Then the price effect. We need a lot of this information, but in the final analysis, we need this. And we can compute it per input. And we watch out what are the positive sign and the negative sign, and what are the meaning of the positive and the negative sign. Basically, to be price efficient, this and this should be equal. So it is positive when the value of the marginal product is bigger than the price, and vice versa. It's negative when the value of the marginal product is less than the price. Okay. So when you have this, it says that tilapia operation is not input price efficient because we did not see any zero. Okay. This should be zero to be price efficient, but they're not. They're bigger than zero. And the total is 28%, in fact 29%. So to achieve input efficiency, we want them to be equal, right? And so how do you, for example, for positive price effect in stacking density, this is the number of fingerlings in the cage. This is positive, so that means that the value of marginal product is bigger than the price. This means that you can increase, actually, the stacking density so that your marginal product will go down, right? When you increase the use of the input, the marginal product goes down. So to make this smaller, you have to increase your input use for this particular input. Sorry. Yan, nasa na ako. There. There. Okay. For stocking density, you can increase. For capital, you can increase. But feeds and labor are negative. So this means that the BMP is small. You want to make it higher. And to make it higher, you have to reduce your input usage. Okay? And therefore, we recommend here that we should reduce the utilization of feeds and labor, and we can increase fingering use and capital inputs. Here again, there's a big story on the feeds. One of the reasons why we have pollution in Taal Lake is because of overfeeding. Okay? Normally, the farmers will feed their fish ad libitum. It means as much as the fish would like to eat, they will give them feeds. And you know, these are fish cages. So when you spread or you throw the feeds, it doesn't have a bottom to settle, unlike ponds. When you have ponds and the feed settle down on the bottom, the fish can go there and eat the settled feeds at the bottom. But in the fish cages, they are nets. Okay? So when there are excess feeds, because the fish will catch the falling feeds, and when the fish miss these feeds, they just settle at the bottom of the lake, not the bottom of the cage, because these are nets. So when it settles on the bottom of the lake, they become pollutants. Okay, and that's where your pollution comes from. So there's overfeeding. Question: why they overfeed? Well, they have the desire to make the fish grow as fast as possible. Okay, so that they can have bigger fish and make bigger income. And also, there's a little fault on the side of the feed manufacturers. You know, they field out people to talk to the farmers and promote the feeds. And they teach the farmers to give them this much and this much and this much, you know. And so they end up teaching the farmers to overfeed. And why would they do that? Of course, the more feed that the farmers would buy, the more business for them, right? So there's a little fault there on the side, but they won't admit it anyway. This is your total factor productivity. Adding out all of this, and we want the annual growth rate, okay? And in the end, we have a 9% total factor productivity. And these are the contributors. If you notice, the biggest contribution is coming from price inefficiency. Okay? So if we can correct the price inefficiency of the farmers, we can have actually more total factor productivity. So here, the large positive price effects present an opportunity for intensifying input use, but we have to consider the carrying capacity of the lake. The scale effect is negative, meaning increasing size of operation is not advisable. The technical efficiency of farmers offers plenty of room for improvement, because so far we found that this is less than 70%. And note the technical change have little effect here, despite the big development in the genetic, varietal strains of the tilapia. The reason is that even if the technology improvements are available, farmers do not take advantage of it because they are far from the sources of these new technologies. So in summary, we put together the estimation we got from Tornquist and from the frontier production function. And we see, this is pond, by the way, this is cage culture. The one from the Tornquist are all technical change. Okay? These are pure technical change estimates. This is technical change, and these are others. So in the thorn case, we are not able to produce or estimate the other effects. Okay, only the technical change effect. And in general, the pond-based culture of tilapia has the potential for higher TFP growth because this is technical change. There's still no technical efficiency, no scale effect, no price effect. So if you add those up, you're going to get a very high TFP. Okay? And the reason here is if the tilapia pond culture will go into intensive production, they can get more output actually. Even if semi-intensive production. The intensive and semi-intensive means high input. Okay? At present, our ponds are under extensive culture. So, the phenomenal growth of our tilapia industry came from the availability of high-quality seed, especially from neighboring regions near the source, and also from culture intensity, meaning using more inputs. But given the high cost of production due to input intensification, and at the same time, decreasing real prices of tilapia, you have a double squeeze in the profit margin of the tilapia farmers. Okay? And this is a serious issue in sustaining the growth of the industry. We can address the problem of high cost. One, we can look at cheaper alternative for commercial feeds. At present, they are experimenting on duckweeds as supplementary feed, but there's a constraint in the production. You need a very large area to grow this aquatic plant. This is an aquatic plant. So you may use your area not in producing duckweed, but in producing tilapia. That may be a better alternative. We can also try to reverse the trend in the real prices, real tilapia prices, and this can be done through demand creation in non-traditional tilapia consumption areas. Meaning, well, if we can teach the Visayan and the Mindanaoans to eat tilapia, then we will have more demand for tilapia. And lastly, environmental pollution due to too much feeding leads to disease outbreak and fish kill. We have to teach our farmers good aquaculture practice. This is important. This is being promoted if we want to export tilapia. At present, we're not yet exporting tilapia. And farmers have to be aware of proper environmental management to sustain production and income. And my last slide, these are some strategies to boost our tilapia production. We can resort to quantity and price intervention policies. For example, this fingerling dispersal of the BFAR for Get Excel. The BFAR is trying to disseminate this all over the country. Okay, they provide cheaper and quality fingerling to the farmers. So we should continue this. We should support this. There's a lot of problem in the dissemination or distribution of the Get Excel from BFAR. Based from our interviews, the BFAR is not able to sustain production that can be distributed to the farmers nationwide. Farm-to-market roads, well, this is always a necessary condition for bringing your harvest to the market so that you get a better price, not only for tilapia, but all agricultural products. And then altering consumer preference for tilapia. You know, the consumer have a unique behavior towards tilapia. They like tilapia live. But live tilapia can only be transported nearby. You cannot transport it very long or very far. So we have to learn how to eat fresh chilled tilapia. So far, we're moving well here. The tilapia in supermarkets are all fresh chilled. Okay, and so now, before I don't like to buy dead tilapia also, but now I learned how to buy dead tilapia from the supermarkets. And then value addition. lately we are coming into tilapia fillet. So this is a very big potential to export. The color of tilapia fillet is very nice. It's rosy actually, and you can see the grains, the meat of the grains in the meat of the tilapia. If you go to the Shumart supermarket, you go to the freezer section, you can see tilapia fillet from Sarangani. The manufacturer is Sarangani. So lastly, the investment on R&D can be focused on saline tilapia, because this is the frontier. This is the area where we have not yet succeeded actually. The Mologot Cusco from Pangasinan and the best from BFAR, if we can commercialize it, that's going to be very good for our industry. And this is a very good justification. The fact that the tilapia we're producing now is coming from the 10% of our waters. The 90% is brackish water. So we have a lot of brackish water environment, which we cannot use for tilapia a lot because we do not have the saline breed. Okay, so if we can have this, we can, we can take advantage of our very deep brackish water environment. And therefore, that can multiply our production ninefold. The assumption is we're not producing the milk fish and the shrimp anymore. But of course we will. But if we can, have an alternate saline breed, then that is a large potential for the industry. So thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you.
We now invite our audience to share with us your comments or inquiries regarding the presentation. Or Dr. Garcia has already scheduled an exam after this. We have room for one or two comments. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, I'm Ben Garces, I'm with the World Peace Center. Maybe this is not a question, just to add some context to the presentation of Lee. In terms of the geographical difference of the growth rate, I think it's true that the expansion was more on regions 3 and 4. The reason being is, well, apart from the tilapia is available in Nueva Ecija, I think the environment for culturing are also there. Unlike in the Visayas, we have very minimal freshwater areas for culture. In the Mindanao area, we are seeing some potential for growth already. But again, I think it needs some, how would I say, promotion for that to be to expand. Just a response also on the fingerling issue. The problem, I think, is that there are too many strains that are floating around the corner, and most of these are gift derived. So it started with a gift, and then followed by the Get Excel. Lee was able to present to you the Genomar Supreme Tilapia, which was also being promoted between 2003 to 2006. So that's, I think, the reason why in the cages for Region 4, it was mainly because of the Genomar Supreme Tilapia. Genomar something Tilapia.
Supreme Tilapia.
So, in terms of future research, I think we need to look at strain comparison, and maybe for the expert to decide which strain should be disseminated through the BFAR regional hatcheries. I also understand. I also agree that we need network of hatcheries, wherein these hatcheries should also be able to have good broad stock maintenance. Kasi ang problema ko, in many hatcheries, they don't have good management of the brood stock. And finally, in terms of the prices related to the feed, I would go for better feeding management rather than increasing stocking density. especially for the case in the lakes. Because if we we suggest increasing stocking density, that would be also resulting to increasing the feed. So maybe we will just introduce good aquaculture practice, and then and also look at reducing the use of feeds. My final point is also on the feeds. Most of the feed companies have contract growing.
Yeah.
So the farmers, no choice, nandun na eh. So talagang parang broadcast na lang, morning, daytime, noon up to evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. That is a good point that Visayas doesn't have a lot of freshwater area. And the recommendation that we can increase stocking density is covering up to 2006, 2003-2006. Now, I think the farmers felt that they have the edge to increase stocking density, that can increase their profit. And they did. They did actually. That's why we have that fish kill in the rural lake just lately, right? A few months ago. So they learned that they can actually play around with this VMP, the price, and they learned that by themselves without us economists telling them. Right? But it was not a good idea because then there was just too much. But I think the fish kill happened mostly with the bangus, not the tilapia. If you notice, there's so much fish kill in the shellfish rather than the case of the tilapia. And yes, managing the feed, having better feed management is a better option because that will reduce the cost of production. At the same time, that will reduce pollutions in the lake.
Thank you, ma'am. One more.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I think in our analysis, it is also important to emphasize that tilapia is an introduced species here in the Philippines. So the Mozambique tilapia or the Mozambicus and the Nile tilapia, these species came from Africa. So this also affects the taste and preference of people, Filipinos, to these species. And I am from the Visayas. I believe I can speak in behalf of those people from the Visayas. On top of having a vast fishing grounds in the Visayas, small-scale fisheries or municipal fisheries is very active in our area. So we don't really explore much on, we don't really rely on aquaculture, fish from aquaculture because municipal fisheries is very active. On top of commercial fisheries, especially in the Visayan Sea and Cebu Sea in our area. And on our analysis, this is suggested or maybe a possible research topic or extension of this research. I think it's also good if, because on your research, you focus on single species aquaculture, just tilapia. But there are technologies that, and now there are farms that employ or use multi-species aquaculture or multi-species farming, like tilapia farmed together with prawn. So the analysis will be different, or the results will be different if you look at these types of aquaculture or farming setup.
Okay. So yes, tilapia is an introduced species, so we have to learn how to eat the fish, and so far so it's very good in learning to eat the tilapia. Well, one is because we do not have the luxury of the nice fish species coming from the Visayan Sea and because here in Luzon they are just really expensive. Two, in the conquest, we have the what you call polyculture, that is adaptable to polyculture in the Turkish decomposition. So it's a total revenue, right? And it's a total cost. But in the frontier, you will have a different analysis there because you have to break down the output into your first crop, which is probably tilapia, and then your second crop, which is probably prawn or something else. Could be crab, could be mussel. So it is a little more difficult in the frontier decomposition. But in the Turkish decomposition, we can accommodate polyculture.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. We regret to cut